Let's be real. Suffering, it's a part of life, right? Nobody gets a free pass. But the real question is, how are we supposed to handle it? Well, we're about to dive into a really fascinating and maybe even challenging framework from a 17th century theologian named William Bates. Think of it as his guide to getting through the absolute hardest times in our lives.
Okay, so this passage right here, this is the foundation for everything Bates is going to say. The central idea is that affliction isn't just random, meaningless bad luck. Instead, he sees it as chastening, which is a kind of loving, corrective discipline from God. That single concept is the key that unlocks his entire way of thinking.
So when hardship hits, bam. Bates says we're standing at a critical fork in the road. And he argues there are two very common ways to get it totally wrong, and only one way to get it right. Let's break down what those paths actually look like.
So here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at the two wrong turns Bates warns us against. First, just ignoring the message completely, and second, collapsing under the weight of it all. After that, we'll turn to what he says is the correct path, seeing hardship as a father's discipline, and we'll uncover the surprising harvest that this point of view can actually produce.
First up, let's talk about that path of ignoring the message. Bates calls this despising discipline. And believe me, he sees it as a seriously dangerous response to hardship. This is the path of just being indifferent, of showing contempt.
So what does he even mean by despising? Well, it's when we get so hardened that we don't even feel the blow anymore. We just shrug off the pain, refuse to even think about why it might be happening. Bates describes affliction as a kind of medicine. And if you can't feel the medicine working, well, it can't heal you. You just become completely unaffected.
And he uses this really powerful metaphor to illustrate the problem. He says that if hardship, the whip and spur, can't change a person, then comfort and ease, the rich pasture, definitely won't. They just become more and more set in their ways.
Bates warns that this contempt leads to one of two really dire outcomes. God might just withdraw the judgment, leaving the person in a miserable delusion to harden completely, or he might escalate things, turning rods into scorpions to force them to finally pay attention. Neither one is a good situation to be in.
Now, the second wrong path is the total opposite. It's not about ignoring the pain, but being absolutely crushed by it. This is the peril of despair, or, as Bates puts it, fainting under pressure.
And he lays out this pretty clear downward spiral. First, despair makes you hopeless. It cuts what he calls the sinews of obedience, meaning you lose the will to even try. Second, you become incapable of feeling any comfort. Nothing helps. And finally, a faint heart becomes a false heart. To get away from the pain, you might start abandoning your principles, choosing sin just to escape the suffering.
This leads to what Bates sees as the ultimate folly. To escape a temporary, lesser evil, which is suffering, a person ends up choosing the greatest evil, negative, eternal consequences. In his view, it's a tragic and completely illogical trade-off.
Okay, so if ignoring hardship is wrong and despairing under it is also wrong, then what's the right path? Well, Bates presents it as this careful balance of two things: a deep, humble reverence for the experience and a firm, solid hope in a positive outcome. And this brings us right back to that word chastening. The key is to completely reframe it. It's not about punishment that's meant to destroy you. No, it's corrective discipline from a loving father, and the goal is to refine you, not consume you.
I absolutely love this metaphor. It captures the idea so perfectly. The worthless bramble bush is just ignored, but the valuable vine, the one that can bear fruit, it gets pruned, sometimes painfully, so it can become even more productive. So in this view, discipline is actually a sign that you are valued.
Bates then makes this really powerful distinction. He says our earthly fathers, well, they might discipline us imperfectly, maybe for their own pleasure. But God, the Father of spirits, corrects us for our profit. His discipline is this perfect mix of wisdom and love, always aimed at our ultimate good.
And what is that profit? What's the whole point? According to Bates, the immediate purpose is to make us partakers of His holiness. Essentially, suffering is a tool that's designed to shape our character to be more like God's, to make us better, purer, and stronger people.
This all leads us to the final, and I think most hopeful part of his argument, what he calls the harvest of righteousness. This is all about the concrete benefits and the positive outcomes that come from going through pain with the right perspective.
Now, Bates is a realist. He starts off by admitting the obvious. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. He's not telling you to enjoy suffering, but then he immediately pivots to that crucial phrase, later on, however.
So what is this harvest exactly? Well, according to Bates, affliction is designed to produce real character growth. It strengthens our faith, it builds patience, it weakens those destructive desires, and it helps loosen our grip on all the temporary stuff.
I mean, what a poetic way to sum it up. When you really grasp this perspective, that suffering has a loving purpose and a profitable outcome, it completely transforms the experience. It helps you find sweetness in bitterness and beauty in pain. It reframes everything.
So, what's the ultimate solution? For Bates, it's about letting your faith override your feelings. Your senses might be screaming that this suffering is pointless and awful, but a deep belief in a loving purpose can correct that judgment. It can give you the assurance that you're not going through it for nothing.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over. In a world that so often sees suffering as just random, meaningless, and something to avoid at all costs, what happens if we try on this 17th century lens? How might the idea of purposeful, loving discipline change the way we face the inevitable hardships in our own lives?